Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. I have a wonderful guest to share with you here today. Lisa Marie Platske came to me through Engel Jones. Engel Jones has a podcast called 12-Minute Convos. Excellent podcast. Oh my goodness. He's interviewed probably 2,000 people by now. Lisa Marie was a guest. I was a guest. And then afterwards he says, the two of you need to meet. And we've been having some wonderful conversations previous to today. And also even just right now, we've been chatting and having a great conversation. I said, we need to start recording so we can share it with all of you. Lisa Marie is a former federal law enforcement officer. She left that after 9/11, and she became the CEO of an international leadership development company called Upside Thinking. And she is an award-winning leadership expert as a result of that, recognized by the White House, by the Small Business Administration, the SBA, and she's spoken on stages in various parts of the world to over 100,000 leaders on the topics of leadership, vulnerability, forgiveness, and executive presence and connection. And so she's got a lot that we can talk about here. She's very passionate about talking about your destiny, discovering your destiny, living into your destiny. And so Lisa Marie, I'm just really excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm excited to be here with you.
It is a pleasure. So, I gave them a little bit of a quick background on you for our listeners, but, tell us a little bit more, unpack that a little bit, because I know there's so much that we were just talking about, like so much that you're working on, so much that you are feeling called to.
Oh, thank you. My background is an interesting one, having come from federal law enforcement, and I was not someone who thought I'd have a business. And what I love about our conversations is they're about the calling. Like, what are you called to do in the moment, in the here and now? How did you get to where how you landed up at this very moment? And so I was thinking that I was going to be in the federal government for my entire life and working in law enforcement, working on the piers in New York. 9/11 happened. My job, my world was turned upside down. And I did not have a vision then that I would be opening a business. And yet here I am. And one of the things that you and I talked about was this tapestry, how you get these little strings, and you get the strings and they form pictures. And you look back and you go, well, of course I got that experience for that reason. Well, of course that happened for me for that reason. And for me, when I look at my journey, I'm not sure how many people have intentional journeys versus accidental ones. I believe there are a lot of little synchronicities that show up in life that allow you to stand where you are. So for me, it all started in law enforcement, and then with my business 15 years ago to be where I am today.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about accidental versus intentional, because I know for myself, like, I had an intention. This is the way it was going to go. So just want to let you know, God, this is the way I think it's supposed to go. And then that's not how it actually went. It was like, oh no, we have a different path. And so the accidental experiences and callings that came along the way were far better than anything I could have planned on my own. It's like we create these plans, and God is the one. It's like, what was it? Somebody said, we plan and God laughs, or something like that, and it's not from a callous standpoint, but it's the, oh my gosh, there's so much more that I have for you. But in order to get to that, sometimes we have to go through difficult seasons. We have to have certain experiences where we get to, so that we can learn certain things, and some wonderful experiences as well. So right now we're in the middle of this whole COVID situation, and still on lockdown or shutdown, or whatever you want to call it, self-distancing as well. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of, well, this isn't the way it was supposed to go. This isn't the way I expected 2020 to go. I heard somebody, on Facebook made this comment about, there's it's like a software program, I think 2020 has a virus, and I'd like to uninstall and reboot and try this again. And I think that's where a lot of people are. And then you and I were talking about this. Some of your clients and my clients are having some of the most, and us as well, are having some of the most amazing experiences. So talk a little bit about that. How is that a mindset shift that needs to happen in order to go from this isn't what I wanted to being able to have some of the greatest opportunities right now? And so how do people make that shift?
I love the question for the reason that it is a both and. It is a both and question that you pose, and that you presence what's going on in the reality. And there are several elements that come to mind that are practical. And one is that when I look at where I'm standing did not come because of today or the last 8 months. Where I'm standing is because of the last 50 plus years of my life and the choices that I made to be in this place here, and the things that I had to look at and unpack that were ugly and painful and hard and messy. And so I can say that from all of those little choices that I made to look at things, like when my business coach said to me several years ago, "You're one disaster from going out of business." And I went, that's terrible. Like, why would I hire someone to tell me this? And yet what it had me do was look at all of the pieces that were not working to be able to create something that would. And the other part is that I love Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. And this is still a time of grieving, although there are many things that are going well. And Nicole, I'm celebrating. I'll then wake up and be sad. And then I'll have great experiences or conversations with clients that go really well. And then I'll be kind of angry about something. And then there's so the collective of what's going on in the world. Being human, I feel it. And I feel it at a very deep level. And the choices that I've made for my business, my mind, my body, my physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, financial, relational, creative self, that well-being has been all what has allowed me to experience the moments of acceptance and the moments of joy and celebration. So there's so much to that it's not just a this or that. It really is a both and. It's the actions and also the reality that just because you experience something good or joy doesn't mean everything at all times, without exception, is good. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, it's funny that you talk about that KublerRoss progression. And when I put that out on Facebook and LinkedIn, I had some people that said, "Oh, here's where I am." And other people said, "This is where I am." And some actually were very astute and said, "Depends on the day, depends on the moment. I don't know. I might be here and then I'm there. I don't know." And that's a really great point, because sometimes I think maybe that's just me. I don't know. But, I sometimes like to put things in neat little boxes and go, okay, this is the way it is. And I think human nature, we do that, right? It's like, oh, okay, so that's what it is. And so therefore stay there, like don't move. And then when we feel something different, like, what's wrong with me? Like, I shouldn't feel that. I'm already in joy. How can I go back to grief? How is that possible? But it is entirely possible. And when we don't judge it, when we let it be, then we can enjoy the journey just a little bit more. Coming back to that whole accidental versus intentional, we can enjoy that journey. When I let go of the control that I wanted to have on how things were going to go, I was able to navigate. We were just talking about that, right? Like, things that have been showing up for both of us. And it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know I was going to be doing this, but all right, that works. Okay. It's just, and you
Yeah.
flow with it. Now, how do you know the difference between flowing and drifting?
Ooh, good question. Flowing and drifting, flowing and drifting. For me, I I I look at it that there's a middle point. So flowing and drifting, they can be where you're in the moment, right? Versus I'm just completely uncertain. It's like when I would be in the dance of surrender versus claiming something, like this is what's going to happen and this is what I'm planned and this is what it is. And oh, by the way, now I'm just going to surrender and see what happens. And I went, neither one of those work very well. Because when I'm over here, I'm clinging so tightly to the way something looks. And when I'm over here, I'm in the place of, well, I'll just accept whatever comes. And there's this place of resting in, where I find that when I'm resting in the moment, there isn't the feeling of being adrift. And there isn't the place where I'm just where I'm in the space of floating, not flowing, but floating out there, that the resting is such a place of joy. And that reptilian brain, where we've got fight, flight, or freeze patterns of how to behave, that flow state is a state of ease. It's a state of grace. It's a state of I may not have all the answers, so there still could be uncertainty. However, there's that trust component that you spoke about, where I'm not in the place of I'm just wildly adrift and just going, yep, whatever comes, I'm succumbing to it. There's a difference. That intentionality when it comes to being in flow is a consciousness, an awareness, a choice point that's very different than being adrift.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I think about my own life. I keep coming back to, my own experience with that. And you're right. Yeah, this whole idea of being one or the other, because there are times where I wanted so much control. And then I was like, all right, I'll just let it be. That did not work either. And I don't think that's what God is actually calling us to, because he's like, no, I want a partner. I don't want a pawn. I'm looking for that partnership. He wants to partner with us in creating. So it's like a co-creating experience, as opposed to a pawn or a puppet or something like that. So there is this balance. Now, you talk a lot about destiny and purpose and calling, and some of these words are used interchangeably: purpose, calling, discovering your greatness, your destiny. And in some ways, some of them are actually similar, and then in other ways, some of them are not the same thing. So can you talk about what is purpose, calling? When you're talking about even discovering your greatness, is that even the same thing? And where destiny comes in?
Yeah, thank you. Nicole, I look at it, when I think about the world, the planet, where we are now, what's going on day to day, or just as a global perspective, that every single being, without exception, has a particular blueprint that's theirs. It's their assignment, it's their calling, it's their mission, and that remains unchangeable. Like that's what they are designed to do. And if every single person had the courage to truly step into what they were called to do, the world would be a magical place. And most people are settling for what is comfortable, what is good, what feels like they're supposed to do. It made far more sense for me to stay in the government, getting a regular paycheck every 2 weeks that came with a 401k and good benefits, and stay the duration, than it did to take the leap of faith without a business degree, having ever met anybody who owned a business, and living 3,000 miles from my closest friend or family member. To open a business made no sense on paper whatsoever. And yet there was a recognition that this was mine to do. And so I believe that people get that all the time, their blueprint, their calling. And the only way that you get to greatness, and the greatness isn't like winning some award, or the greatness of actual full expression of why you were created, is by doing that which may be highly uncomfortable, highly doesn't make sense. We continue to talk about that word trust, and you just trust that it's going to work out even if it doesn't make sense. There are more times in 15 years of owning a business that it hasn't made sense to me than it has. Like, that's really the reality of it. And there are times when I'm in the middle of a project going, I don't get it. And yet I'm clear that this is what, if I listen, that this is what I'm to do. And so that's the part where for me, the destiny and what you're destined for is so important, because it's about that the world misses out when you don't do your thing, when you don't step in. It's not that you just miss out. It's that every other person on the planet misses out because you're not doing your thing. And I could have stayed in the government, and I was good there. There was a sign there that said WWLD. What would Lisa do? I was good at my job. It was a good career for me. I made a difference. The difference that I make today is exponential. Does it mean I'm the biggest difference maker on the planet? No, I'm doing my part in the blueprint of what it is that I'm called to do. And even when I worked for the government, there were guys that used to say to me, you don't belong here. Like, they knew before I knew. They knew that it wasn't the fit for me. And yet there I was, year 2, year 5, year 10, staying and working and doing a good job. So there are these differences to it. Mission is something you get, and it's yours. It's something that doesn't change. Your vision may change. Your values may change. Your mission is yours. And you've got that from a very young age. And it's you can shake it off. You can say you're not going to play. You can hide it under a rock. You can do lots of things, and it's still yours. And it may show up in very interesting ways.
Well, you mentioned about the, sorry, go ahead. You were going to say,
no, please. I just was going to say, including discomfort. Like, there's something there's more for me.
Yes. Well, and that brings up that point where you said earlier about everyone gets it. The question is sometimes it'll pass through and you don't hold on to it, or you don't accept it. It's kind of like you get that flash, and then it's like, oh, and then you go back to doing the same old. Right. So how does someone know the difference? Coming back to this whole drifting, flowing question, how does someone, because I hear this a lot when people say, I'm trying to find my purpose, trying to find my calling. And I think that it's there. They just, they discount it. They overlook it. And they're looking for the logical thing, or even the woo-woo thing. But then they go, oh, well, no, it can't be that. It's got to be something else, or yeah, I'm really good at that. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm good at that, but like, it can't be that, because it's just that, And so how do you help people to define and discover what that is for them, so that it's not I think that's it, maybe I'll try that for a little while, but that it's oh wow, that's my thing.
My place that I start with is giving people permission to just simply verbalize what moves them. because most people, like you said, make it complicated. Like, it can't be that. It's too simple. It can't be that. It's got to be this. And part of my mission has been transforming lives since I was a little kid. My grandfather, I remember when I was 9 years old watching Merv Griffin, said, when you walk into the room, you change the energy of the room. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I'm 9. And like, whatever you're saying, Grandpa, he was very much and spoke in these cryptic things. Love, one of my first mentors in the world. And I look back to that and I laugh and I go, of course, because there's this element of just the transformation in the questions I asked as a kid, in the same questions that I asked when I was in high school and would get in trouble, in the same ones that came up in college, the same ones that came up in the government and the business. Like, it is part of who I am. And there's also this service element that comes up over and over again, where I've always been involved in service projects. These are part of who I am. And when I ignore those pieces and think that it has to be that I come up with these beautiful phrases, it's like, that's not it. It's really that simplicity. Disney's mission is to make people happy. It's 4 words. It's not this big complicated, to be the entertainment mega center, blah, blah, blah. And their number one value is safety. So when you look at that, it's like people complicate things, even organizations. And when you start with, what is it that moves you? Your mission is something that should move you to tears. Like, it should move you in a way that you are so inspired by it. When I say that I'm committed to mercy and justice and protection, I cry. I cry because those are the things that break my heart when I don't see them present. And those are the things that when they're there, they still move me to tears in a different way. And so people look for it to be something complicated. What have you been doing since you were little? And if you don't remember what it was like, and my husband doesn't remember a whole lot of his childhood. If you just don't remember, you block that part, or that's just how you're wired and you don't remember it. Go back to those experiences that touched you. And you'll find that there are pieces that have already told you what you're here on planet to do. I've got certain clients where it's about expression and sensitivity. They're sensitive beings. I have other clients where it's about vision and purpose. I have other clients where it's about their gifts and actually about fully claiming their voice and using that for good, to be a force for good on the planet. It's never this big, long scroll of things like people want.
Yeah. Well, and I think about, like, myself when I was exploring what my own purpose was, and we started our businesses, my Discover the Edge business and your business, in the same year, actually. And prior to that, I was thinking, like, okay, so I've had businesses for many years. I thought this was the direction I was going to go. Things didn't go the way I expected, and here I am. And I went through this series of asking myself that question of, like, okay, what brings me joy? What am I always doing automatically? Like, nobody had to teach me that thing. Or convince me to do that thing. I was just doing it. And it was funny because one of the things that came up from when I was a kid is that I reorganized my room all the time. I was constantly reorganizing my room. And I thought back to that, and I'm thinking, yeah, what 8-year-old is literally moving furniture like every 3 weeks and just completely rejigging it all? And I thought initially at that time, oh, I'd make a great interior decorator. And then I realized quickly, no, that's definitely not it. Let's not complicate it, like you said, too much. it was the organizing. And it wasn't even just organizing furniture. It was this whole idea of maximizing efficiency, maximizing potential, have it help, like playing to the strengths of the room, playing to the strengths. And I realized that maximizing potential and that helping people to play to strengths is something that I've always done. I used to go on dates, my first date, I'm like, so, what are you great at? Like, what do you love doing? And what are you great at? And what are you passionate about? And it's like, that was long before I was coaching. And I'm thinking, I just thought these were normal questions to ask, right? To get to who the person really was. And they're like, I don't know. I mean, you're asking them all these questions. Nobody ever asks these questions. I'm like, they don't? I don't know. Why don't they ask these questions? I think these are important questions. And it was just this automatic thing because I just love to see people to step into that greatness. And as I said, in that same gift then is and core thing that I do plays out in when I'm working with businesses and helping them to maximize their potential, earning potential, maximize their efficiency in what they're doing in their systems and everything. But it's that same core thing. And it showed up so early, and it's fascinating. But again, we think about those things as like, well, that's just, doesn't everybody do that? And they don't.
Right. That's the part, is that what comes so easily is often discounted because everyone must do that. And the other tricky piece to it is that what you're rewarded for and learn to do well, sometimes people believe that's what comes naturally, and it's not. So it's also about looking back and saying, what is that? Because much like you, I was encouraged, you should go into event planning. And I have a very successful event that I've done for 12 years that I love. And I have put together all of the pieces for that. And so, yes, I never wanted to be an event planner, and yet here I am, the humor of it all, 12 years later with Design Your Destiny Live, doing this event. And part of it is that what that is about for me is the transformation in creating safe spaces. It's not about the event planning. And so you can look at things and go, well, here's the thing. Like you said, well, wouldn't I be a professional organizer? Well, not necessarily. Like, what is the reason behind why that showed up? And even with myself, when I'd be the one that would call the police for domestic violence incidents, there was that element of the protector and transforming the situation. So when you look at things as to why they show up and how they show up, there's far more that meets the eye about what that is. That's your purpose, your blueprint, your reason for being. I believe that everybody right now on the planet was chosen to be here during this right now for a reason. Now, some people are in deep fear. Some people are in great love and generosity. It's been interesting. Everyone was chosen for the gifts and for what they have.
Yes. To bring to the table right today, like to bring to the world right in this moment. And so then we look at, how do we do that? What is it? And then how do we bring that to the world? Really interesting. Now you work with companies as well. When I introduced you and I talked about your leadership and leadership presence and all of that, how do you apply this? Because we're talking on a very personal level here. How do you apply that to a organization, to a whole team?
Well, this is all the Designing Your Destiny, and all of this from the lens of leadership is about 7 pillars that I researched. And I was really curious when I was opening my business. I was like, what do people do that are really successful? What do leaders do that is different? And there are a lot of books on leadership. I mean, there's probably millions of them, hundreds of millions of them. I mean, it's been going around since Aristotle. So we've got a lot of material out there. And for myself, for me to make it practical, I interviewed people to say, well, what is it that you do? And I came up with 7 themes that I would hear over and over and over again. And those 7 areas were around starting with a written plan, understanding their personality, creating partnerships with others, living your priority, understanding what's most important to you, creating a meaningful and memorable presence, evaluating your progress, and being able to invest in your own development personally and professionally. And as I was looking at these and looking at them, what I recognized is that the leadership in an organization, when someone does that, when someone takes those 7 pillars and looks at them for themselves, their ability to take the organization further, because they're connecting with their team, allows the team members to flourish. It allows the leader to flourish. And it also allows a little bit of light to be cast on the areas when something isn't working. So I often go into organizations and speak or do work in a team, in a collective, around the 7 pillars. And that's also what we talk about at Design Your Destiny Live, and when I'm doing my retreats or workshops with coaching clients, because that's the tactical part of it. And then you have the other components of consistent action and of building strategy and the parts of the brain science and the mind. Though that's the tactical, the seven pillars that oftentimes organizations say, I want you to come and talk about this. And through that lens, we talk about vulnerability. We talk about the importance of forgiveness. We talk about elements that are around how you're seen as a leader when you're in this place. You can do all those tactical pieces, right? But your beingness, who you're being as a leader, and you get this so much. You could do probably tens of thousands of podcasts on it. Your beingness is really what has people.
Well, it's amazing because there's all these different ways that people, and I love the way people look at the lens, they look through and see leadership. And to your point about, and I love, it's funny because I've worked with leaders who, clients, potential clients, and they'll say, you need to fix my team. My team is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I have told them what they need to do. They are not doing it. I don't know what is wrong with them. We just can't find good people, or whatever it is that they say. And it's always fascinating because at one point I had this revelation and I said it, and it's kind of like stuck with me now as I say, the bottleneck is always at the top. If you ever noticed, when you look at a bottle, the bottleneck is always at the top. And they're like, what does that mean? It's like, that's you. It starts with you. And that's a good thing, because then you have the opportunity to make an impact, rather than looking at and saying, we need to improve our leadership skills and how we get everybody else to do what they're supposed to be doing. Is what you're talking about, is starting with yourself. And when you start with yourself, even when you were talking about with your grandfather complimenting you and commenting on your ability to shift the atmosphere in a room, as the leader shifts, everyone else around them creates a space for them to shift.
Yes.
And so it's be the change that you want to see in the world. You want to make change? Well, okay, start with you. And as we start with ourselves, then we can create and impact the change, and the ripple effect that goes out from that is incredible. So yeah, really good.
That's it. And that's even when I was looking at my business, and my business coach had said that several years ago, I went, what is it in me that needs to change? Not what in my curriculum needs to change, because I could change my curriculum. If I am the same and there is this issue, then really nothing changes. And so a lot of times, you're right, people will look at all of the external factors versus looking internally. It's harder. Even when we look at larger elements, I'm sometimes in the conversation around race relations, or conversations around that are world peace conversations and humanity. You don't change humanity. You change yourself. And once you change yourself, you then have the ability to see things a little bit differently and have a different contribution. And that's the continual evolution of really what leadership is. So,
Yeah.
as you say, leaders of transformation.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I was like, wow, that's the thing. A lot of people think it's about leadership. It's actually the leader itself, the person who is leading transformation, and it starts with themselves. So this is so, so good. So you have talk about your event. You also have a free gift for our listeners, and we'll make sure that that link is in the show notes, but talk about what that is that they can receive as a starting point, learning more about you. And then, as I said, your event, some of the opportunities that you provide for people to start exploring what you're doing here.
Oh, thank you. So with the gift is an influential leadership blueprint, and it's a blueprint I like tangibility. I like what's the thing that you're going to do. So the blueprint actually has 3 points in it, and then there's actually space to be able to write out and how you're going to implement it with really simple tools, and so that there can be a change from when you read it to actually say, this is what I'm going to do to use it. So that in the blueprint is about, if you're questioning what your soul's calling is and you want to make a bigger difference in the world, this just puts some simplicity around it. And the event that I have is Design Your Destiny Live. And that's where we gather the change makers, the leaders, the individuals in the world who are interested in, I want to make a bigger contribution. I want to be a bigger service and make a difference. And some of them aren't sure what their mission is. Some of them are crystal clear. Some of them are from corporate backgrounds. Some of them have businesses. They gather together and have vulnerable conversations around, how do I be this leader of transformation?
Awesome. I love it. And actually, I'd be curious to know a little bit more. We can talk more about it in your event, and maybe that's something we can explore, because I'm sure there's a lot of synergies and an opportunity for even our leaders of transformation to take what they do to the next level. So we'll talk more about that. But Lisa Marie, thank you so much for being here. And I love your heart and your centeredness and presence. And just real, even just comparing the two, my cat's playing, comparing the two, when we talk about the floating, the flowing and the drifting, I think sometimes just seeing things side by side helps us to understand more, or the middle piece is like, where do we, how do we apply that in our own life? Where are we, and where can we, how can we shift so that we can start to enjoy the journey just that much more? And I also, and as I said, I appreciate also when you were talking about how you actually identify, and it's so simple, and we make it so, human beings like to make things complicated, but just to make it simple. How do you find your calling? Your calling has already found you. Now it's about actually accepting it rather than discounting it. So really, really good. Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate our listeners for being here. And I am a big believer in taking action. So I encourage you to take action, get a copy of that, or download that assessment where you can identify where you're at, help you identify your destiny, start designing that. We'll make sure all the links are in the show notes so that you can get to that. But I really do believe that leaders of transformation take action. So whether it is even just sitting by yourself and saying, okay, so when I was a kid, what were some of the compliments that I got, or the comments or observations that people had about me that was just, that I have so far discounted? What is that thing that I've been doing that I always do, and nobody's ever had to teach me how to do it or convince me to do it? Or what is in your heart? What do you have a soft spot for, right? What makes your heart sing? What makes your heart grieve when you see it, if it's not there? And so taking some of these things that Lisa Marie has been sharing and taking action on it is, you know what, we were talking about this actually earlier before we started the recording, is that in this time of COVID, it's like the whole world has taken this little pause, okay, momentary pause in this span of history where we're all at home and we're all, you know, most of us are at home, some people working really hard and so forth, and our first responders are out there, but, you know, are taking, for most people, that they're like, oh, wow, what are we going to do? The whole world is shifting. This opportunity, hopefully, will not come again for a long time where we have this again. So take this opportunity to be able to just look, step back and pivot, reevaluate, recreate, reinvent yourself, strip away what isn't really you, what is the good, so that you can get to the great. Take the time to do it now. This is an incredible opportunity to do that. And I encourage you to reach out to Lisa Marie if you want some support with that. UpsideThinking.com is her website, and you can go there and get her resources. She's got some wonderful information there. Go check that out. And we'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can find us on social media. And we'd love to hear your stories. We'd love to hear how you're making a difference in the world as well. And so reach out to us. Follow us. We love hearing stories, and we love sharing stories of people that are making an impact. And so with that, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.